I nearly make it it's nearly 2:05. And I appreciate everybody's time. So we are gonna start, and we are recording this as well. So hopefully, if people come in a little bit later, they can pick up on this as we go through. But first of all, I just wanted to say welcome everybody to the first Sysdoc webinar of 2023. I know you can't go on to mics and stuff, but I'm hearing the whoop whoops there for what this is all about, and it's really great to have you on board today on our first webinar. The webinar is called "Do You Know What You Need to Know About ERP?" Firstly, I'll introduce myself. My name's Robin Ridgely. I'm a lead consultant in Sysdoc's transformational change capability, and I will be your host and facilitator for the day. So we are really pleased that you've joined us, and we have 3 great speakers today who are going to take you on a journey of discovery. So what's on the menu today? So on the menu today is I'm going to take a couple of minutes to tell you who we are and a little bit about Sysdoc for those who may not know who we are. So just a little bit about that. Then I'm going to hand over to Craig, who's going to give you a little bit around understanding the importance of Pre ERP. Then we're going to hand over to Sarah Cooten. She's going to do a little journey into the program execution. And last but not least, it's Donna, and she's going to talk to you about setting yourself up for success, change, and people, and why that's really important. So before we kick off, we have an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have in our Q&A section. So as we go along, if you want to plop some stuff in there, any observations, any thoughts, any feedback, then please do so, and we'll pick up some of those as we go through, and we will do some Q&A at the end of the session as well. So I hope that is going to enlighten you a little bit about the subject today. What I'm going to do first, though, is I'm just going to do a really brief view of who we are. So Sysdoc has been involved in supporting complex change and transformation for over 30+ years. And our purpose is we land change. And what's that really mean? Well, in other words, we are here to help organisations to successfully navigate complex change and transformation. And we do that by tailoring our approach to ensure that we help our clients reach their desired outcomes, enabling them to transform, adapt, and achieve your organisational ambitions. Our approach is built on solid theory, and we can do waterfall or agile kind of delivery to help make sure that we help you land your change successfully. If you want to find out more about Sysdoc, you can actually go onto our LinkedIn page, which you've come through today to come to us, and you can ask us any questions as we go through about a little bit more about what we do, and there's an opportunity to do that at the end as well. So that's a little bit about who we are, but you're not here to talk about who we are. You want to know about our subject today. Do you know what you need to know about ERP? And I'm really pleased to hand you over now to Craig. But before we do that, and I did this on the run through as well, this is our experience in this area. We've done a lot of these types of transformations all across the world, and we're both based in the UK and New Zealand. And as you can see from some of the people that we've been doing this with, it's really important that we understand that it can be sometimes the things that really make the difference are the things we're going to be talking about today. And we've been trying to do that and supporting that with these people and these clients that we've been working with over the last 30 years. So I will remember to do this on the next one we do that, and we'll talk through the experience. But now what I'm going to do, and I said I was going to do this, I'm going to really hand you over now to Craig, who's going to talk to you about understanding the importance of Pre ERP. Over to you, Craig.
Hi everybody. My name's Craig Lennon. I suppose I'm now head of propositions over here, previously head of capability, and have significant number of years experience in transformational change in and around ERPs and more broadly. And I think what we want to talk to you, certainly what I want to talk to you about today is I guess some of the preparatory work that needs to be done to really make sure that you understand what you're getting into with an ERP. So we'll take that in a number of stages. It's interesting actually, sometimes the lack of understanding of what an ERP actually is in the eyes of some of the key decision makers, and how it differs from other enabling technologies. And essentially, an ERP can be, hugely powerful and, hugely beneficial to an organization in the right circumstances. But more often than not, they tend to be expensive, disruptive, and quite often frustrating in the wrong circumstances. So how do we draw the distinction between those two situations? Well, essentially, an ERP, they came out, the history of ERPs really comes from manufacturing execution systems, where, back in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, organizations were putting, looking for a better way of organizing all the data to enable them to make much better informed decisions around manufacturing. So if they had a change in the order volume, that went right the way through the system and allowed them to adjust what they were buying in terms of raw materials. It would influence the way they were warehousing, etc. So highly integrated, very powerful in those circumstances. Over the years, organizations have added other functions on. They've added procurement, they've added finance, they've added HR and people, they've added asset management, etc. So if you have a situation in your organization where you need one version of the truth to support integrated decision making, they're really good. But you need to understand what types of decisions you are trying to make using an ERP, and make sure that you don't over engineer them and include functionality that genuinely you're not going to make that type of decision. You don't need that regularity of data. You don't need that one version of truth across the whole organization, because that's where a lot of the pain and discomfort comes from in terms of trying to implement them. So what we're saying in this section really is make sure business leaders really understand what an ERP is and what it isn't, and be really confident that actually this is the right decision for the organization and you've got the scope right. So I think the next question is, moves us on to, how do you make sure that this is the right thing for your organization? Well, a lot of the work we do, and certainly the work I do, is in and around operating models and organization design. And as part of any operating model, you'll have a clear definition of what your customer is and what they need from you and how you deliver value to that customer. And that essentially is core business process. In order to make those core business processes work, then actually you need a number of things. One is an organization structure with roles and responsibilities, accountabilities that are clear. That's the org design. But you also need to know what information you need to make the decisions that are required to make those business processes work in order to deliver value to your customers. So essentially, if you do that work and do that thinking, and you find that actually there's an ERP-sized hole in your operating model, then you're pretty confident that actually an ERP solution is what you need. If you find that there isn't, then you'll probably find that you've got other less heavy-duty systems that will enable you to do what you need to do within your organization. The second point I want to make in this section really is to talk about strategic objectives and outcomes. We see too often ERPs coming onto the agenda for organizations because people think they're a good idea and everybody else is doing it. And the systems integrators and the providers of ERPs are telling them that you need an ERP. You need somewhere for all of your data and your systems, and the benefits will be fantastic. Not necessarily so. So our advice is always to go back and look at the strategic objectives and outcomes for the organization. So what is it you're actually trying to achieve? And how dependent are those strategic objectives and outcomes on the ability to make those types of decisions that are supported and facilitated by an ERP? So can you do it without the ERP? Or actually, if you can do it without the ERP, how difficult would it be? So it's to get into that space of weighing up the cost of the investment, the level of disruption that you're likely to go through against the strategic outcomes, strategic objectives and outcomes for your organization. So you can actually demonstrate a return on investment, and you can build a really solid business case around those strategic objectives and outcomes. And when I say outcomes, it's things like, if an organization needs to, and we're working with an organization at the moment, is genuinely going to have to double its capacity, its production capacity, probably in a period of 18 months to 2 years. So it needs heavy duty investment in a number of areas of the business, including the way it manages data. So it's going to need to be able to map that out and to execute against that. So its investment in ERP, its investment in new technology needs to be linked back to a hard business measure and objective, which is doubling capacity. And doubling capacity without increasing unit costs and without impacting the quality of what they do and without disturbing their supply chain. So that's what I mean by the linking back to strategic objectives and outcomes. I suppose the next thing to move on to really is what do we see going wrong? What happens with client implementations? So we'll move on to just considering some of those questions. Robin, if you want to flick the slide forward, that's great, thank you. Oh, we've gone 2. Okay, thanks. I'm trying to work out where this view is as well, actually. So any hints and tips in the Q&A if anybody recognises that hill and that path. ERP implementations typically do overrun. They typically underdeliver, and they generally cause significant disruption to the operation of an organization. That's kind of a stated fact. And that's despite all best efforts in terms of how you set the project up and you change management and everything else. We see a lot of the symptoms, or these symptoms of poor implementation or failed implementation, as being symptoms of underlying issues within the organization, and they typically kind of fall into 3 areas. The first one is accountability. So who owns the business outcomes? So who's on the hook for doubling the capacity? Who's on the hook for increasing productivity? Who's on the hook for driving down unit costs? Who's on the hook for increasing market share? Because those are the people who have strategic objectives that they're measured on, and it's their dependence on data and information and an ERP implementation that makes you confident that actually you've got the right, you understand who's accountable for the benefits of the implementation. And I think one of probably a takeaway from this session is it's highly unlikely to be the CIO who's accountable. The CIO is accountable for the delivery of the technology, but not for the business benefits, and that's a mistake that's made in multiple times in many organizations. It becomes a technology program, and lo and behold, the business benefits are not delivered. So work out who genuinely is accountable, who can't live without this implementation, because they're the ones that should be in your sights in terms of accountability. The second area is measurement. So again, coming back to the issue of outcomes, strategic outcomes. What are you measuring? And it shouldn't be measuring, we've implemented the technology, it's gone live, we've got this level of user adoption. You need to measure the hard business objectives and outcomes, and don't stop until you've delivered them. And then the final point really is looking at the scope. So what needs to go into the ERP? What data, what information, what decisions? Where are you going to draw the boundaries of that system? Where is it okay to have local variation and local arrangements for this data? Probably a good example to bring this to life is you probably want to know total employee cost, budgeted employee cost, and actual employee cost. That's probably a pretty critical piece of information. Do you need chapter and verse on absence levels in your organization, in your main ERP? Probably not. Are you going to carve out a world of pain in trying to get accurate data on absence? Yes, you are. So why would you do that? So it's that type of consideration that you need to think about. And I guess just to round up this first section, which is, you know, the pre ERP thing. Essentially, what would we do with a client in the pre ERP space before a decision's been made, or closely after a decision's been made, to get the scope of the program right and to get other things right? Look at your operating model. Is there an ERP sized hole in your operating model? Can you know, things you can't do without it? Look at your strategic objectives. How does this investment support those? Get the scope right. So what decisions are you going to make based on the information that's contained in this, and how much of that information needs to be up to the minute, you know, accurate at a point in time, and what doesn't? So get the scope right. Accountability right. So it's probably not the CIO. There's somebody in his organization, his or her organization, who's accountable for the technology, as I've said, but the business benefits, therefore the sponsorship and the ownership of the program, probably somebody else. And you know, a good quote I picked up from a client overseas was, if you're offered somebody to support an ERP program and they're easy to release, then they're the wrong person. So 9 times out of 10, it's somebody who really is difficult to release from their day job that is probably, you know, they are the people that you need to be involved in your program, particularly at a senior level, and getting that senior ownership right. And then measure everything back to strategic outcomes, and stick to your knitting on that, and don't stop your program until you've actually demonstrated you've delivered those benefits and that value from the investment. That way you're much more likely to get the return on investment that you're expecting, and you won't avoid the disruption, but the value and the benefit and the return on that disruption will be worth it. And I think that's, you know, that's more or less all I wanted to say on the kind of stuff you need to think about before you make the decision, or very soon after making the decision. I'll hand back to Robin.
Thanks, Craig. Really appreciate that first bit of on our journey here. And I think from my experience as well, you know, some of the things that Craig's been talking about are some of the things that we come up against a lot in regards to having that full understanding of what doing a pre ERP kind of assessment would actually support in regards to that, and understanding the things that Craig has talked about. We're going to dip into the Q&A later on. But hopefully you've picked up some really good tips and tricks there, and actually what we're going to do now is we're going to move forward into, so when we've done all our pre-ERP, we've done the kind of things to understand this, what does it mean to actually start delivering this and implementing this as we go through? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass across to Sarah Coots, and she's going to do a little journey into program execution. Over to you, Sarah.
And it really will be a little journey in 15 minutes. Thanks, Robin. If we just move on. So if you go onto the internet, you can see loads of models. If you put in what's perfect ERP implementation, you'll see these. You'll see some subtasks as well on what major programs go through. It'll show subtasks like discovery. You look at your requirements, you'll gather your team. Everyone will be really sparkly at the start and be like, let's think about possibilities. And the sub-stages of the ERP program will be in the ebook that Rochelle's going to send afterwards. I think it's also available on LinkedIn already. But you're not here to be told something that you can find on the internet. It's an hour of your time when everybody's really busy. So what I'd like to do is just take you through some of the pitfalls that might be overcome before you encounter them. So I'll just start with that discovery one. And I've been on 4 ERP programs, and each of them have pretty similar pitfalls. So at discovery, you'll have your shiny new team, and they will want to correct all of the pain that that company might be feeling. It could be in HR, finance, procurement, whichever suite is going to be implemented. And they'll say, right, let's customize to do this. And all I will say to anyone on this call is please try and avoid this. Unless you have got unlimited amounts of money to work with to customize the system. It'd be a bit like asking Google to customize their search engine just for you. It costs billions. And also one thing that we try and do with clients is just say, please adopt the system and adapt yourselves. For example, ERP models, a lot of it is about self-service. And if your HR team do all the hiring, you might want to adopt the ERP system that puts hiring into the hands of the manager, but get them to adapt to the system and adopt what the system does. What I'd also recommend in the discovery phase as well is looking at what's outside ERP. I think Craig touched on it a little bit, but in all of my programs that I've been through, there will be changes to policies, there will be training in how to hire people, there'll be IT systems that need to be changed off the back of this, and therefore start collating at this point what's outside the system, not necessarily just what's inside the system. And then at this stage, I'd highly recommend that you look at the people that are going to be with you throughout this journey. And as Craig said, you've got to choose really, really good people and start to backfill them right from the start. So we then come on to design, which again you can find on the internet, but just a little bit more insights about that. I'll stress again, adapt to adopt. You'll be given another opportunity at this stage in the programme to customise the system, just avoid it as much as possible. I'd also start logging any decisions that you make at this stage and all throughout the programme, log your decisions, because it'll go into change, it'll go into comms, it'll go into training. And if you all are heading along the same drumbeat, it will make life so much easier. You don't have to have incessant meetings about, what's happening with the actual system. A really good idea here as well is to cleanse your data, because I've seen ERP programs right at the end saying, oh my goodness, have we seen our data? It's absolute rubbish. We've got six people being paid, one person being paid 6 times. So just have a really good cleanse of all your data at this point, because it'll save you so much time and effort when you get to the end of the program. And then we've got development that comes next. In my opinion, this really is where your change and training teams should start to be engaged. And your teams that you bring in need to be strong. And I would say that they need to have a certain amount of project management knowledge in them as well, so that they can add to the programme in terms of their critical milestones. Also at this point, you might want to think about who you're rolling this out to at the end, because we're just working on a programme where we found out there's a lot of manual workers that don't actually have access to laptops. So start to think, who are the people at the end who are going to get this? And you might need to go through some kind of procurement to get people laptops, and also do Microsoft training, etc., etc. At this point, think about who will do the training, who will write it, does it need signing off, and when? And a big learning from all of my rollouts is keep it simple. When I explain to program boards who want, this beautiful training program about self-service, I just say, I have an iPhone, I've never been trained in it, I know how to use it, and so will other people be able to use it for the self-service model. So therefore, I would concentrate on the real hard parts of the system that might be hiring managers, finance business partners, etc. I'm not going to belabor that point. At this point, you'll also probably have an idea of the go live date, and therefore you really should start thinking about comms, in my opinion, and start to drum up that support for the programme. And have a look at what's going to be happening at go live as well. Are you going to have a major IT system upgrade, which you want to avoid like the plague? Are you going to have a restructuring people over the next 6 months? Do you bring that forward? Do you put it back? Is that all of that stuff that you need to think about? And at this point, I know we've felt the pain on many programs before, when we haven't got the leaders or sponsors together to say, this is your role as a leader going through this program, and therefore this is where your sponsorship training starts, and this is what it entails. So I'd highly recommend that you do that at the development stage. Now we go into testing. I'm not going to say much about testing. It's pretty much what it says on the tin. You'll have loads of people in a room doing user acceptance testing, which then feeds into the training. Big learning here, lots of biscuits, lots of tea, lots of coffee. But at this point, I've found that people start to get a little bit testy and tired, because they're usually about a year into this program now. And training may need to be rewritten off the back of testing, and people may be showing real signs of fatigue and attrition might suffer here as well. But if you've got a really good program manager on this, you'll know that this is coming and you'll be able to mitigate the effects of this at this point before it happens. And then, oh my gosh, deployment, you're like that, yay, but secretly you're going, oh my God, is it going to work? But you just have to trust all the hard work that's gone into this program. If the comms drum beat has been steady, change team have been engaged, and you've taken teams through their journey, and if the training has been done beforehand and heavily sponsored by the leaders, are so key in these programs, you'll be in a really good place. You'll also have some super users. Hopefully you've taken them on a 6-month journey beforehand. They've seen the system, they've been released from their jobs, they've got really good support afterwards. Excuse me. And then hopefully things will go smooth as you then go into the support phase. So we all breathe a sigh of relief at the support phase. And I think it's really key that the comm says things will go wrong. It's never going to be a perfect rollout. But again, your sponsors will be able to say, we're expecting this. It's all cool. Don't worry about it. But I think if you've done the pre-planning in advance, to say we've got a really strong business as usual process ownership model to govern any changes that come out. You've got a fantastic support network who are supported, that will deal with any queries from any of your colleagues. You'll be in a really good place. If you've got a really good system integrator that you've built trust with as well, who can really plough through any tickets that you're going to get in hypercare, which you will, then your leaders will be able to celebrate success and just realise across the business what a massive achievement everyone's been involved in. So I'm just going to take a sip of coffee as Robin hopefully moves me on. Thank you very much, Robin. So apart from learning, oh sorry, sip of coffee, I'm getting a bit dry. So apart from the learning from the previous slide, here's a bit more. Change management and comms needs to be in place at the design stage, and also your system integrator, and they're your big four, your Deloitte, EY, etc. They may give you a program plan based on the system milestones. And one of the big learnings that I've had in my career is get in there, be part of all the meetings, but be part of the critical path planning as well, because I can see we've probably got a lot of change practitioners on this call. You know that it's the change and the training that is the squeeze at the end. So if you can get some project management experience and put those in at the critical times, you will be absolutely brilliant. So governance, I know people don't like saying bad news, but be honest about any risks. Don't brush them under the carpet. Don't push them down the road. We know the law of Kaizen says that if you catch the challenge at the start, it might cost £1. But if we catch at the end, it's £100. And with these ERP programs, you can add probably 3 or 4 zeros to the end of that. So try and be part of a really honest team where you actually catch things at the start, mitigate them at the start. And all the way along this journey, it's really important that you not only challenge each other, but also you support each other, because I'm sure we've got quite a few people on this webinar that know this is hard work. And I've seen a lot of careers end by going through some of these journeys, so support each other. And also with governance, I think with these kind of ERP programs, people make it so difficult. I'm like, you just probably need 4 key things. It's program board, it's a steering committee, it's a design authority for any changes, and then you've got your sub-level project meetings. And if it goes a bit belly up at some point, you might need some scrums to put things back on track really quickly. So what else? I'd say each key stage of the programme, just make sure you celebrate people, you celebrate lessons, and you make sure that you take the lessons learned into the next stages. And also post-COVID times, I never thought that I'd say this because I love working from home. I love being with my dog and my husband, but have activities that bring people together physically, eyeball to eyeball, that actually really generate that trust in each other. It could just be a monthly session. So I think that's really important. So moving on, Robin, if you haven't already. Thank you, MC. So lastly, you as leaders, if you are leaders, right from the start, just bring experts in or have your in-house experts guide you through your role as a sponsor or a leader of change. That's so key right at the start. And you probably know if you don't support the change, your team won't take the change on, and it is going to cost oodles of money to embed the change at the end of the programme. So that's lastly number one. Lastly, number two, right from the start of the programme, have a robust programme manager with you who understands ERP and is really people-centric to put everything together for you and keep you honest. If you have a system integrator, sorry, my glasses are steaming up. If you've got a system integrator, they'll put a program manager beside you anyway, but make sure that you have your own that's really people-centric, that can just bring those niceties together on the critical program path. I shan't belabor this point too much, but trust each other. If you're all on message, you'll be moving forwards together, and therefore keep reiterating that message in all your governance meetings as well, and celebrate. As I said before, have your program manager do a lessons learned after each stage and make sure you see the good in the program as well as the, oh my God, this is really hard. Anyway, that's all from me. So I'll move on to Donna. So thanks, Robin. I will go back on mute.
Thanks, Sarah. Really appreciate you taking us through that journey there. And for somebody that's been on a number of journeys myself, all the things that you talked about there were really poignant about how some of the things that can go right and go wrong as well when you're going through this journey. So we've got our next part of our webinar to go to, and again, this is this just follows on from, we've done our pre ERP, and we're now going through the journey. And what we're going to go and see from our next speaker, who is Donna. This is about setting yourself up for success, and it's kind of building on what Sarah said around the change side and the people side. So I'm just going to hand over to Donna now, and she's going to talk us through her piece of the webinar. Over to you, Donna.
Thanks, Robin. So my passion is people and culture, and what I really get a bee in my bonnet about is when people aren't held at the centre of change, because you could have a brilliant solution that fits the company perfectly, answers all of those questions, ticks all the boxes, but if we don't consider the people element, programs can fail. So what I wanted to talk you through was some of my experience that I've had, and I'm going to focus probably on the earlier stages when you do first kick off these projects, because I think it's really important that right from the start we set the tone for change. So if some of you are change managers, you'll know sometimes you feel like you need to push yourself in on occasions to some of those meetings that you need to be involved with. So I just wanted to talk through a few of those things that I find really useful when thinking about the people element of change. So firstly, thinking about a change strategy. So the people strategy element needs to sit alongside the solution. So they really need to be able to overlay one right on top of the other, and they work really, really closely together. So it's really important, and I know Sarah alluded to this, that those who are working on the programme are very clear on their own roles and responsibilities. So where they start, where they end, and the interconnections between each other, and really build as a team, because you'll come to know each other very, very well by the end of a programme, and building those really strong relationships. The solution and the people should not be kept separate. It should be considered with a holistic view. Also thinking about the level of leadership and sponsorship on a programme really early is really, really important. So is that sponsor in place? Does that sponsor know that they're a sponsor? Do they know exactly what's expected of them and what good looks like? And do we have the right leadership in place? So leading people through change is tricky, because ultimately people don't want to change. We might think that we want to change, but really when it comes to it, it's quite difficult and it's a little bit uncomfortable until it becomes normal. So we really have to hold people by the hand and lead them through the change. Thinking about those that are going to receive the change, one of the first things that I like to do is a cultural assessment. Culture is ultimately thinking about how things get done at your company. And if you think, for example, some companies are quite hierarchical and therefore they like a message from the leader to tell them what's happening, and sometimes they might not take it seriously until that actually happens. So understanding how an organisation gets something done, how they like to be treated, is really, really important. That's really valuable information, and that can really help to set you up for success. I'd also do a change maturity assessment, so a slightly different angle here. Do this in kind of an interview style because it really helps you to build those relationships with your key stakeholders. And I'd be asking questions about what happened last time that you tried to implement change. How did that go? So was the sponsorship good? Did the sponsorship stay throughout? How did you feel about the communications? Did you feel like you were always kept up to date? Did you feel like people saw you in this change, at the centre of this change? And what that does, it starts to pull out silos. Lots of companies have silos, it's quite normal, and it helps us to understand the company as a whole. So where are we from a change maturity? Does it land well here? If not, what went wrong and what can we pick up and change? And then within those functions, departments, however you're set up, are there slight nuances? Do they behave differently? So if you're in a procurement function, do you behave entirely differently to people in manufacturing? And therefore, do we need to think about how we shape the change for those people, how we communicate and how we engage with them? So it's something that's brilliant to do right at the start. So before you begin to do your change planning, you've got a really good idea of what the culture's like and what the change maturity is like in the organisation. I then like to think about benefits, because I think always in change we always say, what's in it for me? That's all I'm interested in, ultimately quite selfish, I think. And we want to know, what am I going to get out of it? So those benefits need to be clear for people in a way that they understand, spoken to in a tone of voice that is really digestible as well. So what does that mean for me when that change comes in? I really want to know that. We also want to think about stakeholder mapping. So who are these people that are impacted? Where are they? How are they going to react? Is it a big change? Is it small for them? Have we got people in there that are really influential that we could pull on, and really dig into that and keep that as a live working document throughout the change. Might also want to think about change networks, thinking about those people with influence. So could a change network work for you? Ultimately, what a change network does is you have people dotted around the organisation. Sorry, if you're a change person, you already know this. People around the organisation, quite strategically placed, who are influential, that could help us to land this change. When you're leading a change, you might not even know those people that are being impacted, and they might not best receive a message from you. It might be better if it's one of their colleagues. So we really upskill those people so that they can help us to land that change, to socialise the change, to speak to their colleagues, to really keep the momentum high, which can be challenging because these ERP programs can be quite lengthy. So change networks can work really well. I also like to think about change readiness. So how are we tracking whether we're actually ready for change? Well, we ask the people in the change. So the people who are going to receive the change, we ask them, how ready do you feel? So we think about, commitment to the change, about receptiveness, and we place, a survey through the life cycle of a change, so we can dig into that and think, okay, at this point, this is what people are telling us. Is this change landing? Is the message landing? Do people understand what it is yet? And it really helps you to keep shifting in a more agile manner rather than just going on that straight path. We can kind of go back and pick up the bits that we might need to. And then moving on to capacity and capability within a change. Often what you find with change, and I think this has been alluded to already, is that you have people who may come forward and say, I want to be involved, or I am involved. But then when you really dig into it, you find out that what they're actually doing is doing the change off the side of the desk. And it's with the best will in the world. People want to be involved and want to help, but you really need for people to have that dedicated time. And especially thinking about people, we all do need time to digest. We need to hear messages over and over again, often for those to land. So we need to make sure that people have the right amount of time to dedicate to the programme to digest it so that it can be successful. Also thinking about those change networks, there might be some capability work that we can do there to upskill those change networks. So it not only helps the change, so it helps the change from the perspective of they help to land in their areas, they will raise their own profile. So there's something in this for these people. They raise their own profile, but we can also give them upskilling in respect of how to develop and deliver presentations. Have they ever done that before? Is that something they'd like a bit of help with? Do they want to bring up their change understanding and think about how they can land change better in future? Because in everybody's role, we all have to do change from time to time. And so I think really giving those change network members, whether they're change agents or super users, that upskilling to bring them up to a level where they fully understand what's expected of them and how to deliver it, and giving them the time to do it is really important. Often change network members are in full-time roles, and this is something that they are doing over and above. So having a conversation with the managers there to make sure that they are behind them and allowing them to dedicate that time to a programme is really, really important. And also thinking about leadership capability. So if we've got a strong enough leadership capability, sometimes in change and often at the middle management kind of layer, we need those people to be really bought into the change. So end users are impacted. If their manager says, actually, I'm not really interested in that change and I'm not even going to think about it, I'm not interested, everybody in that team follows suit and says, oh, well, my manager's not interested, so I'm not really interested. I won't bother wasting any time and effort on it. And it's really important that leaders understand their role in the change, that whilst we can build a brilliant strategy, if we don't have sponsorship and leadership and this kind of change network support, it's really difficult to land change. So lots of love needs to be given to those groups of people, I would say. So what's happened in my experience? All sorts. I've got some notes here, so sorry if you just catch me looking at my notes. I'm not a fan of PowerPoint especially, so I'm just going to refer to those. So what happens when you don't do discovery? You are going in completely blind, and that is an accident waiting to happen, because if you don't understand the people, you don't understand how change lands, and you try to use a vanilla approach and force it in, it will feel like it's being forced in. People will feel that they're having this change rammed down their throats, whether they want it or not, because we've not given any consideration to the people element. So that people will just become resistant. They will become resistors, and once you get a resistor, that spreads, and that's not healthy to land change. Another thing that I've seen is where teams have tried to forge ahead with no vision. there's no real vision for people to buy into. That's really hard, because how do I hook this? How do I hook this for people if there's no vision? So that's something as well that I think at the beginning of a programme is really important, so people can go, oh yes, this is for me. I can see my bit in this and I really want to get involved in it, because that what's in it for me is there and I need to get on board. Sponsorship, where sponsorship falls away, that is especially problematic too. People listen to leaders, and that sponsorship has to last throughout the life of the programme, not at the beginning and then disappear because there's something that we call magpieing, where we see something shiny over there and go, oh, I'm going to go and look at that shiny thing instead. But we need that sponsorship throughout the life of the programme. So those sponsors need to really understand how important their role is. The middle managers that I already referred to, when you don't have those on board, it is very hard to turn the tide back. So do that work up front. It's super duper important. And then the other thing I just wanted to point to was user acceptance testing and the involvement in user acceptance testing. So these change network people that you've got, that you are building the skill of, if we can get them involved, if we can get them talking to us about their process, getting them to put those processes together even, and then getting them on board to do that user acceptance testing, they can see the system, they can feel it. So it's all been words up until this point, but they can actually see it, feel it, and go back to their colleagues, say, I've just had a go at this and it was really good, it wasn't difficult. And if those are the right people, those influential people, they go back and they spread that message, and kind of that worry goes down as everybody goes, oh, it's okay because Robin said it's fine, and he's tested it and it's all good. And so that's something that I would say, don't miss an opportunity through user acceptance testing. It is there for testing, it isn't learning. However, really use that as an opportunity. I think I'll stop there. I could go on forever with all the things that we've learned. I just hope that some of that is really useful for you, and that if you are a change manager, that it encourages you to push yourself into that programme at the right stage and stay ingrained through the life of that programme if you want it to be successful. So that's it from me. Thanks, Robin.
Thanks, Donna. That was a really great journey into actually understanding how the people element of the change experience is going to be another critical part of what we need to do in regards to implementing ERP. So we're coming to the end of our little webinar here. We've got some kind of things to just have a quick talk to you about. As was mentioned before, we actually have an ERP booklet and guide which goes along with this webinar, which we will be sending to everybody that's actually joined us today. We are going to get in touch with people who've come to see us today, just to get a bit of say hello and get a bit more information. And if you want to actually come and chat to us about things that are happening in your organisation, we're more than happy to do that. We would love to be able to do that. And we would like you to come and actually do that with us. It would be great to understand what your journeys are. And so we can understand how we can actually provide you some information that might be able to help you along the road. So we're definitely going to be doing that shortly. I'm not sure. I'm just about to go and have a look and see if there's anything in the QA. And we'll see what we've actually got in there. And I will just open it up now. It's doing the whirly gig at the moment, and we'll see how it goes. If anybody else is in there and they've got questions in there, that would be great, because at the moment I don't see any. Oh, there we go. We've had Stan has put something in here. He says the execution stages appear to be linear and waterfall driven. Understandably, the phases may be such, but is there agile built into the framework within each stage? This is important for engagement. Do you plan execution of modules in parallel? And I'll leave whoever wants to talk about that to talk about that.
I can probably answer that one very briefly. Yes. Do we plan executions of modules in parallel? On one of the projects, we went live with 4 modules, and therefore we had to work. I think agile sometimes is overused. we had to fly by the seat of our pants actually, and plan a lot of the change activities together, bring together different people who might be getting the change together at the same time, and also redo all of our training program to fit in with all of the modules collapsing together. For example, you could be a finance business partner who also hired people who also bought things as part of procurement. So yes, very much so that we had to do the planned execution of modules in parallel. And then there's another question. Sorry, Robin, I may as well read it. Any words on correcting course if an implementation is already in flight, but the pre-ERP work wasn't executed correctly? Again, yes, we've seen that. I've seen one where we couldn't put it back on track. It was going to cost 15 million if we tried to put it back on track. So we had to disband the whole of the team for a year and then regroup and do it differently. And then I've also seen it on a different program where we had to descope some of the items and then either make a choice to bring it back later or just not do it at all. So yes, we've seen that as well.
Yeah, I think to come in on that one as well. I mean, ideally, it's, you know, do that thinking and that consideration before you make the decision, but it's actually unusual that organizations do that. The decision is quite often already made. There's a decision that you're going with an ERP or replacing an ERP, decision around even what technology is going to be used. But you can always go back and look at the operating model and the strategic objectives just to re-anchor the program. So particularly, why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this because that's what we said we needed to drive out of this change. Those are the strategic objectives we need to deliver. This is the heart of why we're doing this. And that can be really helpful, kind of resetting comms, resetting engagement. You can always go back and look at sponsorship, and it's a brave consulting firm that does this, but we have done it, is to go back to a client and say, wrong people. And you really need to think about who's leading this, because you are going to spend a lot of your money on this, and even at this stage we can see that that's starting to go wrong because some of these fundamentals aren't right. And going back to Sarah's point, you know, occasionally programs do have to be stopped. I mean, I've been involved in a SuccessFactors one that had a 2.5-year pause, but actually for all the right reasons. And then they've gone back and done a far more comprehensive and successful implementation because some of those fundamentals were not right, weren't there, sponsorship wasn't there, critical technology decisions couldn't be made. So that does happen. So you can always go back and have a look. Ideally, if you're thinking about an ERP, give us a ring and we'll help you through the thinking. But if you're already starting to see problems, going back and thinking about operating model, thinking about objectives, thinking about accountability, thinking about strategic measures, you can reset a program and also be brave around scope. So go back and think about what you really need in the core system and what's really going to deliver short-term benefit. You can add bits and pieces, but you know, you can always cut down scope to the things that are really going to deliver value.
There's another observation in Caroline. Thank you for your feedback here. I think what Caroline says is that I resonate with what's been mentioned around the leadership side, and I think the question here is, how do we influence our leaders to see the value of appointing talented colleagues? Back to Donna's point about getting the right people and Sarah's point about getting the right people on this. How do we go about influencing our leaders to appoint those colleagues to work on the project? Who wants to take that one up?
I mean, I'm happy to talk to that one again. I think it goes back to that if these people are easy to release, then they're the wrong people. And it goes back to accountability and sponsorship. So if this is owned at the right level in the organization, then the person who owns the program should be able to make these things happen. So if you need a certain person then they will spring them, and they will make sure that you get them. If you're not getting that, it's probably a symptom of the wrong level of sponsorship and ownership as well. And we see that all the time. It's like, I need so and so, I can't get them for you. Okay, so you're the wrong person to be sponsoring this program then, because you can't give me the people I need.
Sarah, what's your thoughts on that?
This is why it's absolutely critical in the discovery phase to say what people do we need and when, and how do we backfill them. And you've got to emphasize the risks of not having them, that bad decisions will be made that will cost millions at the end. Donna, I know we've got 1 minute. I'll revert to you now.
And yeah, just wanted to add really that if you're really clear on what the roles and responsibilities are of those leaders, if you can really clearly state that, you can quite quickly see if you haven't got the right people in place, and if you can point out those gaps, that's normally helpful. So kind of just going back to square one, what do you need these people to do? Do they have the capability? If they haven't, point it out really early.
Yeah.
Thanks, Donna. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Craig. That's been a fantastic journey today on our webinar. For everybody that's joined us, massive thank you for joining us today. I hope you found that really beneficial. The couple of things to finish off with. Yes, we are going to be reaching out to people who've been on this today to find out a bit more about you. We're going to be sharing our ERP ebook with you. Rochelle and others will be doing that very shortly. You can join us on LinkedIn. Come and find out more about Sysdoc. Yeah, come and find out about more about what we do. Come and find out about some of our great people that you've met here today, and also some of our other people as well. We'd love to talk to you. We hope you've had a great chance and opportunity to find out, and you probably know a little bit more about what you need to know about ERP. So that's our webinar. Thanks ever so much for joining us. This will be recorded, and I'm sure we're going to be sharing some of those things as well. So please do reach out to us, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.